Good morning, and welcome to another edition of Joe on the Job Site. Today, my guest is Nathan Ahrens. He's been in the electrical industry for over 19 years. And we're going to talk today about how he made his way up through the trades, some of the things he's done, and his certifications and training. So, welcome,
Oh,
Nathan. I'm glad to have you this morning.
well, thanks for having me, Joe. I greatly appreciate that.
So, could you tell us how you started and some of the things you did before you made it to the industry and what you're doing in the industry?
Yeah. That's a long story, and like many people here in Florida, I think I have the same thing. I'm not originally from here. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and when I left high school, I wanted to go somewhere that didn't have lake effect snow, and Florida seemed to be the place.
But you traded the hurricanes for the lake effect
I'd
snow.
rather have the hurricanes than 6 feet of snow. Um, so I came down here to go to college. Uh, I was supposed to be an airline pilot. That lasted about 2 years, and realized that lifestyle was not for me. So dropped out of college. Unfortunately, that hurt a little bit, but I did. And as everybody in my generation has been told to go to college, so I thought that was a natural thing to do. Ended up working security and bartending at the beach in Daytona over there, which was nice. It was a great time as a young kid.
So, bartending, you had to have some pretty good people skills to get along with some of those interesting people that are there.
Yes, it was interesting. You got to do one-on-one, interact with people, have great stories, talk about their life, talk about what they're on vacation for, meet beautiful girls, celebrities, make hand over fist cash money on the beach every day, look at the sunset. And that was a good time for a couple years. I was making more money than a 21-year-old kid should be making at that point in time.
So, that sounded like a pretty good gig. What changed your mind?
That is a pretty good gig. I had a realization one night drinking with some buddies, and we were at a bar, and it was an older guy behind the bar. He was probably 65. And I looked at him and realized that if I didn't change my pathway and get some skills, that I was probably going to be that guy at 65. And in the bar industry, as a man, you're not going to make much money at that age. If you're a woman, you're fine. And so I realized I had to get a job with security, skills, and like benefits. So I reached out to a couple friends, and one of them was an electrician, and he got me started in the industry that way.
So, I got to back up a little bit. You said you did some college. What was your goal or your major you wanted in college?
I came down to go to Embry-Riddle for aeronautical science,
Okay, so that was where you went for the air.
which is an expensive commercial pilot's degree. I think I left there with over $35,000 in student loan debt with nothing to show for it.
Whew,
Yeah, that hurt.
yeah. So, okay, so you were a bartender,
Yep.
had a little fun, enjoyed life.
Yep.
What was the next step that you were working for?
I started. They got me on. Went and did an interview. Drove all the way out to Orlando from it. Came back. Got the job. They started me the next day. I remember showing up at the job site with the tools I had.
Now, this was as an electrician?
As an electrician,
Okay.
walked into the trailer, all the tools in my pouch, all excited to start a new job. Foreman looked at me, said, "You're not going to need those. You can put those back in the truck, son." And I said, "Oh, okay, no problem." So I walked back out, put my tools in my truck, came back in. He handed me a tape measure and a shovel, and said, "I need you to dig a ditch from here to there, 3.5 feet deep." I said, "Okay." And I spent a week digging that ditch, and I hated every minute of it.
Well, I started out as a carpenter, and that was the same. Some of the same things I did was as an apprentice, you get to do the dirt work,
Yep.
and then after a while, you get to move out.
Yeah, it's hard to see that point when you first start out, though. I remember getting that paycheck at the end of the week, and I remember looking at that paycheck with taxes taken out of it and everything else, and I was upset because that paycheck was a week's worth of hard sweat work, and I made that in a day bartending.
Oh,
And it
that
is
is,
hard to give that up from one night's worth of easy work talking to girls to a week's worth of digging ditches and dealing around with sweaty men with no belt on and butt cracks. It's a little hard. So
that sounds kind of tough.
it was.
So, we all dig our share of ditches,
Yep.
and we all start at the bottom and work our way up. How did you get out of the ditch?
Well, as jobs progress, you start with the underground at any new job site and you work your way up. And fortunately, we got all the underground done, so I got to go inside the building after that. So I was a young apprentice, didn't know anything, and I was just the gopher kid, go get the wire, go get this, go get the wire stretcher, you fall for some of those at first.
Yeah.
Um, got put with some foremen and some other guys on crews and watched them help bend pipe, take out the trash.
So did you have an individual when you were an apprentice that an older guy or some person that maybe showed you, okay, I'm bending this and here's how I bend the pipe. I read this angle and this is where I start to get the dimension I need so that when you bend it, your bend turns and you go right into the box instead of missing it.
Yeah, no, when they started me off underneath journeyman, I had a few that would show me that and teach me that. Oddly enough, the same guy that told me to put my tools in the truck ended up being my later on and a few jobs later ended up being my main journeyman that I trained under. And that guy I've watched him do magic. So
So you're on the job, what kind of like training did they have an outside apprenticeship, a school or something that you would go to?
they did, but you have to prove yourself first. They as a company you want to make sure who you're going to put through school is going to be worth it. Everything's an investment in this industry,
Right.
and
I can see that point.
time and money matters. And you know how construction works. You've seen guys come and go within a few weeks. You
They
want to
either
make
have it or they don't.
they don't, and you want to make sure that the guy you're going to invest money and time into that might be part of the future of your company is worth it.
Right.
So it took about past my 90 days and a few months. They came and approached me about going to FEAT or the Florida Electrical Apprenticeship Training Program in Orlando here. And they said, hey, look, we'd like to put you through this. And my company at the time paid for the classes. If you got A's, they paid for your books. It was 2 nights a week for 4 years straight. And I said, sure. And they're like, and you're guaranteed raises. I said, absolutely.
You want to
Sign me
get
up.
back up to that bar
I want to
money.
get back up to that bar money. I had bills to pay.
So the books that they gave you, what were the classes like when you were taking the classes?
Well, they start you off with the construction basics, which basically shows you how to read blueprints, kind of gives you the overall idea of how everything works through. They get you your OSHA 10, go through the whole safety training program. And then FEAT works in through there. AC theory, DC theory, construction. They build up a good program. Motor controls, residential. So
And that was your 4 years, and then
that was my 4 years. Didn't miss a day. Went every single day for 4 years. And
they give you a perfect attendance award
I got a plaque. 7 guys and I got a plaque and $100
for perfect
for
attendance.
perfect attendance, which hurt a little bit because that was $25 a year, and that wasn't quite great. So I was like, all right.
Well, if you break it
I
down,
could have missed a few days and been happy with that. But no, I went through that, and then once I finished with that, yeah, you're allowed to go take your journeyman test. And now my mistake was I finished with school and I didn't take my journeyman test. I prolonged it longer than what I should have.
but when you finished the school, you were considered a journeyman,
You
right?
are in a way, yes.
But you still had learning to do.
I still have tests to take and learning to do. There's always learning to do.
Well, yeah, in today's technology, it's changing
Oh, it is
dramatically.
changing rapidly.
When did you finally take the test?
I graduated, I think, in 2012, and I think I finally went and took my tests 2, 3 years later. I'd lost a little bit of the knowledge. I was a little mad at myself. So.
And I take it you passed it.
I'll pass it the first time, but I was very mad at myself. So
Yep. I've been involved in those tests a little bit for the electrical. They are tough tests.
yeah,
They are tough tests. So you're now an electrical journeyman, and right now you're in operations, correct?
currently right now,
Yeah.
yeah, currently I'm in the office. I do our HR and safety program.
So you've moved up through the ranks.
Yeah, I've done every single job possible for our side of the industry.
So what was one of the most challenging jobs they put you on where they let you work through and figure stuff out?
There's probably been two of them. Unfortunately, we've done a lot of trial by fire in our industry, especially for my generation and your generation, I'm sure also.
Oh, yes.
So that's been a learning curve on that. Some guys make it through, some guys don't, and it's a lot of undue stress. I feel. Probably one of the harder ones was taking over a job out at one of the airports here, and we ran a mile and a half of feeder conduit for OUC from their main duct bank, and we had to set 20 vaults. I think they were 10 by 8 by 20 feet long. I think it was.
Wow, that's a pretty good size vault.
Yeah, they came in two sections, 6-inch conduit, and there was over like 24 parallel runs, I think, going in that thing. So we had to go 20 feet deep in the dirt. And you know how Florida is. You dig 3 feet down, you got water. So we were 20 feet down, slope 1.5 to 1, and pumping water out left and right. and we ran a mile and a half, sweeping all the way through one of the airports to feed their new infrastructure.
So with all that water, what'd you do to keep the pipe from floating? Was it concrete encased?
And we concrete encased it.
What'd you do to keep it from floating before you?
Just keep pumping. You just keep pumping. It's Florida.
But now, when you put the concrete in there too, it has a tendency to float also.
Yeah, but then you backfill and compact, and you have to do DO. At that point in time, you had to do DOT specs, which is every 6 inches of lift, you had to compact and meet compaction. So
Okay.
so by that time, it's solid. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I did a theme one at a theme park where we brought a duck bank across, and then we actually added on to a building. We got the footing dug, and we went out to do the compaction test, and we put the ground probe in and hit a conduit, a conduit, a conduit, and another 4 conduits, 6 inch. And we looked at it and said, "Oh, what in the world?" The footing was right on top of it.
Yeah.
We found two of the buildings expansions we did. That's what we hit. And it took them 2 weeks for the engineers to design a workaround for that. And we wound up pouring a footing on this side and a footing on this side, X away and below, putting up a short wall, and then pouring the footing on top of that. So it was encased under it, but the load was not anywhere near the conduits. And the engineer wanted it so if you had to pull out, you could pull in, not only just the conductor, but the conduit if something happened.
No, sleep it through.
Yeah. So it was a challenge and a half, and you had to sleeve them and then do the footings. And oh yeah, I remember one of those.
Yeah, it's you learn things. You learn things. You keep them in the back pocket for later jobs.
Yeah. So what was one of your most memorable jobs you did?
Oh, I've been doing it for a long time. Each job has its positives, or little memories about it. Like I said, we done an airport here in Central Florida. We were there for a very long time, and we built that place out, and it brought me great joy as I fly in and out of that place to know the behind the scenes things. The stuff the public doesn't get to see.
Right.
You know how it operates. Um, I've done. We did a flavor manufacturing plant for a soda manufacturer here in Apopka. That was interesting because that was all Rob Roy and stainless steel and explosion proof fittings. So that was an interesting dive into things. Uh, Wastewater treatment plant, I've seen things that I have nightmares about in that place, and I don't ever want to picture again. But at the same time, it was interesting to see that when you flush that toilet, that's where everything goes, and
I
that's how it
I
gets processed.
I actually built one of those, actually two of those. I did an expansion on one and a new one out in for one of the theme parks. And they had a lot of compost generated from it, so they built a huge warehouse so that they could separate out the compost and ship it out in the trucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you stop and think about what the world would be like without them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Any
It's amazing.
anyway, so in your career that as you're growing through the craft, was there a specific person in the jobs? You mentioned the one earlier that.
Yeah, my like I said, my journeyman that I've been trained under and kind of got with early on, he has probably taught me and taught more guys in the field more than anything else I've seen compared to other trades, other people. I've watched him work with guys, and I've watched guys drive past like 3 or 4 job sites that are closer to their house just to get to the one that he's on. And that says something in our industry.
Yeah.
And I've watched him bring jobs that, multi-million dollar jobs that are 2, 3 months behind that he sets foot on because it's behind, and it still finishes on time. And you know how hard it is to make up a month in this
Oh,
construction
yes.
industry. And he's brought it right to the finish line, dead nuts, good to go. You know.
Yeah, everybody likes to say, "Well, we'll work 6 days a week." Well, that's 4 days you gained out of the month.
Hmm.
How many months is it gonna take you? And then you have to calculate it out. So, in the guys that mentored you, what did that teach you for future knowledge? Because I know you're active in other areas now, that you've moved up.
Yeah, I've been able to take that knowledge I've learned growing up, which is a hard course. I've transitioned now into more of a teaching role for the guys. I'm the old guy now, and that sucks. I bring
Wow, I feel pretty good if
I
you're
know,
the old
right?
guy.
I bring kids in. I bring kids in to interview for jobs when they come in, and I look at the date they were born, and it's the year I graduated high school, or it's it's the year I turned 21, and I'm just shaking my head thinking how far time has passed. But I'm transitioning to that time now. So I try to teach and educate the guys in our field and try to make their life as easy as possible, remembering the hardships that I had and the trials that I had to go through and the stuff that I was upset about coming up that nobody showed me or took the time to give
You
me
had to
tools.
learn the wrong way and
Yeah.
find out the hard way and then finally get the correct way.
Yeah. So I try my best to take time with our leadership in the field. When we move anybody out there, I try to take, we have a training thing I put together. We'll bring 4 or 5 guys in if they're going to be taking over jobs for the first time. I run them through a day of death by PowerPoint and, try to run them through paperwork, what to expect, how to talk to the GCs, how to talk to the inspectors, how to manage their guys. That's the hardest point. A lot of these guys are coming up. We're plucking them out of crews that they've been working side by side for. They're their buddies, and that's great. But once you become a leader, those are your buddies, but they look at you differently. They treat you differently. And now you have to treat them
Yep,
differently also.
been there.
So you lose a little bit and gain a little bit at the same time.
The one thing I found out with that experience is as you grow, and if your buddies don't grow either, but you grow and they wind up working for you and you've been friends for years, you find out who your real friends are
Yeah.
because then you have a job to do and it's not personal and the approach is still polite and effective, but sometimes to them it's just not, it rubs them the wrong way.
Yeah, I had a guy just recently put on a job site to do, and I trained him. I brought him in. I walked with him a couple times, and I'm like, "All right." I said, "This is your first time. I want you to do well." I said, "Pick your crew. I'll do my best to make that happen for you." And he listed off all the guys he wanted, which were the guys that he worked with. And I said, "Well, you might have a little bit of hardship with some of these guys." And he goes, "No, no, these are great guys. I've worked with these guys." I said, "I understand that." I go, "But it's going to change."
Yeah.
And I said, "You're going to need to go behind these guys and check them to make sure that they're doing what they said they're doing, because they're going to lie to you, whether or not you think they will." And sure enough, about 4 months later, I'm walking with him. I said, "How's it going?" He goes, "Yep." I said, "Things have changed." He goes, "They've lied to me a little bit." I go, "That's all right." I said, "That's what happens." I go, "As long as you understand that and respect that and know that it's going to happen," I said, "you can mitigate that." And he's done well with that.
So you've came up from trying college, bartending, worked your way in electrical,
Yep.
and now you're up in the operations. And it sounds like to me that training is kind of a close to your heart item. What other training programs are you involved in, and what have you yourself taken on just to make sure you can teach these young folks?
I learned early on that if the closer you are to the infrastructure that's happening in the leadership roles, the more knowledge you're going to learn. The closer you are to the tip of the wave, the more you're going to have. When you're a young apprentice, you don't care about what's going on in the GC's trail. You don't care about the scheduling. You don't care why we're doing anything. You're just there to get a paycheck and do stuff. You don't care about what the NEC is changing, building codes, whatever. Doesn't matter to you. That's not your pay level. But as you get higher up, the more knowledge you have, the better off you are, and the easier it is to obtain because you're there in the mix of things. I learned that so I've done my best to place myself into that position. So I've joined a few local organizations, ABC, we go to their events and their trainings. I joined IAI, which is the International Association in the Electrical Industry. I've learned a lot from them, especially being an electrician. We have a lot of guys there that are on code panels that change the code, a lot of engineers, a lot of other business owners that are there. And any problems that arise, we can talk about them. And, oh, you're dealing with the same issue from Eaton, so are we. Here's how we fixed it.
Okay.
Um, Safety is a big thing. I've tried to get involved in Facebook groups and other safety people around
Now
Orlando.
you're trained in some other OSHA on
Yeah.
safety, correct?
So when I got moved into our office, I kind of was doing estimating for a little while, and I got stagnant, which is bad in this industry. When you kind of just do the same thing over and over again, you're not growing at all. And I got mad at myself a little bit on that, and so I had to pursue stuff on my own. So I went out and got my OSHA 500 certification, and
Well,
then
that's quite a bit.
yeah, yeah. It took a little bit to track down how to acquire that too, because that knowledge isn't readily out there as easily as it should be. I feel. And then I got my EC license also. Went and took that test and got
Your
that.
EC license is
My electrical contractor license.
okay.
So I went
So
from a
you're a journeyman with an electrical contractor's
yeah.
license.
So I can pull a permit. I have my own business. I can pull a permit in the whole state of Florida, any county. So um, so that's been good. The more you pursue it, the more you have it.
So what you're looking at a young person in today's time. and he or she, you say, how do you approach them and get them to understand that they can have a successful career? Now, the other thing in there too, and you mentioned it earlier, you were a bartender for a while, and you realized this is not going to be a good path for me in the future. I need to change now.
Mhm.
And so you get a young person that comes in and wants to join, learn to be an electrician, and then they're afraid to because they're afraid they don't. What if they don't like it? What happens? What do we do? And one of the messages we always create is you change to another field. I had friends that were in electrical unions that have changed and went into pharmacy, became a pharmacist. I've had, I knew a friend of mine that was a plumber, and he said, man, this stuff is boring. And he did the apprenticeship, went through the whole thing, and he's now a journeyman electrician for another company. How do you talk to those young folks to give them the confidence to say that you can try this and we'll invest in you if you don't like it, because you're the one that has to wake up at 50 and enjoy the work that you do. If you don't like it, you can change. But think about it. There are people, and this is kind of what percentage would you say actually try it and then go to something else as versus. So I've asked you two questions. One, how do you talk to a person to get them interested and show them that you can do this? And then after that, how do you let them know that they can, if they don't like it, even though you've invested time and it stings a little, they can change.
So your first question, how do we talk to them? We don't have to do as much talking as we did before, and that's good. Um, when I got into it, construction was kind of looked on as the last resort, the fallback, the one where if you have 3 DUIs and a criminal history, that's your only resort that you have left, you know? And
Yeah, I've heard that before.
and not that that hasn't changed too much, but it's gotten better. Whereas nowadays it's looked on as an actual respectable career. And not that it wasn't before, but society's view on it's changed. As our infrastructure falls behind and crumbles and you need to make that fixed, we're the guys rising. Your college degree for human arts isn't paying the bills. Guess what? Your electrician's making twice the amount of money you are. There's something to be said there. And Mike Rowe's done a great job pushing that over the last 20 years.
Yeah, I've watched his
I would say
videos.
he's done a phenomenal job of doing that, and him alone probably has turned the viewpoint around. And I don't know if it's the high school counselors are also realizing that these kids are having student debt issues and all that, or if the kids themselves are waking up and seeing, hey, I don't want to be that far in debt. What can I do to avoid that? They're coming into my office and I ask them that, what brought you here? And they're like, well, my parents or my uncle or my student teacher or someone said, hey, if you want to have a career that's going to support your family and not be in debt, this is a good path to take. And we talk about it for a bit.
Yeah.
And the first question I always ask them, well, have you done construction in the summer in Florida before? And they usually say no.
Yeah, that is an experience with the heat.
And I'll usually tell them, "Hey, look, if you can make it through the first 2 years, you'll be good to go,
Yep, you're get used to it.
and you'll get used to it." I said, "And you'll be able to support your family." I said, "It's gonna suck." I said, "But once you get through it," I said, "you'll be fine. Yeah, your friends at McDonald's might be making the same amount as you for the first 6 months." I said, "But after that," I said, "you'll start stacking."
Yeah,
So,
I've seen the change. You mentioned respectable trades. When I was young, you joined the military.
mhm,
You went to work for a factory. You went or you went to college, and then the other one was the construction industry. And I went to college and realized my degree was in civil engineering with a minor in architecture. I didn't finish. I realized I didn't like sitting at a desk. And I got an opportunity to do construction work in the field and realized that I liked being outside doing that. And but back then, if you were a mason, an electrician, a carpenter, a plumber, air conditioning, HVAC, any of those trades that have to do with construction, it was you were respected because you were a tradesman, and that lost a little bit of respect as the turn for everything. Everybody goes to college,
yep,
but it didn't include the people that didn't. They still were people that couldn't make it in college,
yeah,
so they had to come up with something else. But it's changed now to where people are seeing that the trades are as important as a college degree. You don't get the buildings built without them. You don't get the repairs done. Your lights quit working at the house and you got a PhD in physics. You might know about the wiring and understand how it works, but you won't know what really there is to fix.
Yeah, can't flush a toilet, can't drive to the gas station,
Yeah.
nothing
A
functions the way it should be.
yeah, a mechanic, your car breaks. What do? You have to take it to the mechanic.
Yeah.
And fortunately with that, the wages have came up a little better and a little more than what they used to be.
Yeah, that definitely that rolls into the supply and demand of things, so
The supply and demand, it's kind of fun to watch it with the people who realize that all of a sudden their cars broke down after they've had it for 5 years and it's an $800 repair or it's a $3,200 transmission replacement. And where the field guy, the electrician, and the mechanics, they're more apt to play with themselves and keep it maintained where they don't wait for it to go down before they fix it.
yeah.
They don't wait for it to break. The respect of the trades now, I have a lot of calls that come to me off and on. Hey, do you know a good electrician? I've got a problem here at the house. Do you know a plumber? The toilet doesn't work or it won't shut off or whatever. And I've done favors for people and gone in and saw where they had to turn their toilet off because it was leaking all over the floor.
Yeah, my phone does not stop ringing from my company, my personal one. Like, I am worked I think just this year, I've worked every weekend from, December till now, and then every day after work, I go to do work. Like, it does not stop ringing.
Well, and that's the definite need for the trades. And I like the fact that you've got these programs you're involved in to learn what and advance your knowledge and then share it downstream to the younger people that are coming up in the trade. And there's a gap that this is my opinion, there's a gap between the retirees that are going out and the new ones coming up. And the journeymen are not there in the face of them to meet up and supply that training.
Yeah, there's definitely a gap. I'm kind of in the monkey in the middle weird spot. The older guys like you who are ahead of me are fixing to retire, and the younger kids coming in, and I'm kind of stuck in the middle trying to bridge that gap between here's how you use an iPhone and hey, let's get off the phone and do some work type thing.
Yeah.
And as electricians, I know we are at a 7-to-1 loss ratio for every guy. 7 guys retiring, we have one guy coming in, and that's a huge gap.
Yeah. I've heard those numbers before.
And my hardest thing is teaching the new kids coming in knowledge and experience and work ethic, and teaching the old guys leaving, like, hey, you need to pass some of this on before you go. And you need to be patient about it too. You got to keep in mind these kids don't know what they don't know. And you didn't know it all when you first came in. You've forgotten that how long it takes to acquire knowledge. You need to be patient with these guys. And then the communication issue between one generation to the next is also a hard thing to do.
I've seen that.
So
I was fortunate. I had some good mentors coming up in the trades, and they would sit and talk to you. I've had projects where we didn't have tools, and the old guys would go, "Well, we don't need it. Let's do it this way. Let me show you how it's done." But it's also they need to learn. You almost have to try to accelerate that training for them quicker because of the need. But a 1 to 7, that's pretty.
yeah, it's hard. I think the plumbers are even worse. I think they're 11-to-1.
Yeah, they're higher,
They're
11 to 1.
So
But with a little bit of people like you out there encouraging the folks that want to join the trades, I think that's going to help a lot in the next few years. And our message in this program is that no matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, what your education is, with a little bit of heart and a little bit of mind and trying and listening to your mentors, you can have a successful career.
okay.
Yep. So when we got to take a break here.
Okay.
If I'd like to have you come back and talk about some more of your training programs and areas that you've done and some things you've set up in particular to teach.
Okay.
And let's take a short break. I've got to get out and walk the job. If you'd like to join me walking the job, you can see the sun finally came up on it today.
Yeah, let's see what you got going on out there.
All right. Well, thank you. We'll see you here shortly again, Aaron. This is Joe with Joe on the Job Site. This is today's edition. Thank you.